Powerful CEO fell in love with a security guard she had no idea he was a billionaire in disguise. Chapter 1, The Man in the Booth. It was a bitter January morning in Chicago, the kind that turned breath to mist and sidewalk puddles to glass. Cars honked, heels clicked, and powerful people stormed through revolving doors like they were late for changing the world. Elizabeth Hartley, CEO of Hartley Innovations, had just stepped out of her black SUV when she noticed something unusual: a man, maybe mid-30s, standing outside the parking structure security booth, offering a thermos of coffee to a shivering homeless woman wrapped in a garbage bag. She paused, hand on her purse, watching. The man, dressed in a standard gray uniform with a stitched badge reading S. Carter, smiled gently as the woman cupped her hands around the drink. "Stay warm, Miss Martha," he said softly. "I'll bring you some soup after my shift." He didn't notice Elizabeth. But she noticed him. There was something about that moment, maybe it was the sincerity in his voice or the way he tucked a pair of worn gloves into the woman's hands before returning to his booth. It cut through her like wind through wool. Elizabeth, the woman known in boardrooms as the Velvet Hammer, walked into her building more distracted than she'd been in years. Chapter 2, Unlikely Conversations. For weeks, Elizabeth found herself arriving earlier and earlier. She made excuses, needed to prep for meetings, beat traffic, or just walk, but in truth, she was drawn to him. "Good morning, Miss Hartley," he would greet her each day, always with that calm confidence. One frosty Thursday, her heel snapped just steps away from the garage. She cursed under her breath. Before she could balance herself, he was there, steadying her elbow with a gloved hand. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," she said, more embarrassed than injured. "These shoes are not made for Chicago winters." He chuckled. "Seems like most things in this city aren't. Except us stubborn folks." She laughed, surprised by how quickly it felt easy. They began to talk more. Mornings turned into coffees. She brought him a latte once, and he told her about his love for jazz and vintage motorcycles. He mentioned volunteering on weekends, usually with veterans or foster kids. "Why security work?" she asked once. He shrugged. "I like to see people. And sometimes, they need to be seen." It struck her as strange. A man with such intellect and empathy. Surely he had bigger ambitions. But he never explained more. Chapter 3, The Gala Invitation. The company's annual charity gala was approaching. Elizabeth, always the face of elegance and poise, typically arrived solo. But this time, without knowing why, she scribbled out an invitation with a sticky note: "Would you like to come with me to the gala?" She handed it to him one morning, cheeks flushing. He blinked. "As your date?" She nodded. "Unless you're too busy keeping the city safe." He smiled, that rare full smile that lit up his whole face. "It would be an honor." Chapter 4, The Reveal. The night of the gala, he arrived in a crisp black tuxedo. Clean cut, his usual calm demeanor suddenly refined. Heads turned when they entered together, whispers, stares, murmurs, but Elizabeth walked proudly beside him. Midway through the evening, the event's MC announced a special benefactor had made a surprise 7-figure donation to the Hartley Foundation's initiative for homeless youth. "Please welcome, our anonymous donor, Mr. Samuel Carter." Elizabeth froze. The room erupted in applause as Sam stepped forward, not looking at her yet. She followed him with wide eyes, heart thudding. "Some of you know me as a security guard," he said, voice steady. "But I've been blessed. I inherited a fortune, but I've learned money doesn't measure your worth, compassion does. So I've kept my life simple. Quiet. But tonight, I want to give openly, not because I want recognition, but because kindness should never be hidden." Tears filled Elizabeth's eyes. He finally turned toward her. "I never told you who I was because I wanted you to see my heart, not my balance sheet." Chapter 5, the choice. After the gala, they stood outside under the quiet stars. Snow had just begun to fall. "You're a billionaire," she whispered, dazed. He nodded. "Technically. But it's never been who I am. You made me feel seen, Elizabeth. Not as a number, or a charity case, or a name on a Forbes list. Just, me." She looked at him, and for the first time in her life, the woman who always had the answers felt completely speechless. "You tricked me," she said softly. "No," he replied. "I protected myself. But I never lied. I just hoped one day, you'd fall for the man, not the money." She laughed, brushing a snowflake from his lapel. "I did. Long before tonight." Epilogue, Love Beyond Titles. Months later, the parking booth stood empty, because Sam now served as chair of the foundation he once quietly supported. Together, they worked side by side, blending heart with business, philanthropy with strategy. They married under an oak tree surrounded by the very people they'd served, foster children, veterans, and even Miss Martha, who now had a place to call home. Their story became whispered legend, a powerful CEO and a humble guard who taught the world that sometimes, the richest souls wear the simplest uniforms. Love doesn't care for titles, nor does it count dollars. It sees the heart, the kindness, the small gestures when no one's looking. And sometimes, the richest love is born not in ballrooms, but in the quiet corners of our everyday lives, where humanity, in its purest form, still thrives.